Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to be talking about a very touchy subject, a subject that you don't really hear a lot of other people talking about these days. But we're going to talk about it here. Now, of course, as I talk about a lot on this show, I talk about the alien hybridization program. This is something that a lot of different abduction researchers talk about in their books. People like David Jacobs, I bring his name up a lot on this show. And it's more than just that, though. It seems like sometimes they send out. I mean, women are taken sometimes, and they're forced to have intimate relations with hybrids. That happens. You hear about stories like that. But there are also stories where men are forced to have intimate relations with hybrids, and that's what we're going to be focused on today, about some encounters that men have had over the decades with these creatures, hybrid creatures, apparently, and they're basically forced themselves upon men. Now, of course, I do plan on doing an episode at some point in the future here where I focus just on some of the experiences that women have with this. But today we're going to talk about the strange experiences that men have had with these hybrid females over the decades. It seems like what the purpose of this is to create babies. They're trying to procreate. They're hybrids. They're already apparently half human, half alien creatures, these females, and they take men forcibly, either in their homes or take them onto a craft, and they're forced to have sexual relations with these hybrid females for the express purpose, apparently, to have babies, to procreate. That's what it seems like. And basically, the most famous story, a lot of people already heard about this one, was the one of Antonio Villas-Boas in Brazil back in 1957. That was the first case, one of the earliest cases of this sort of activity. Basically, Villas-Boas was a farmer. He was in his early 20s, 23 years old at the time. And him and his brother would farm at night in Brazil. It was really hot in the daytime, so they would do all of their cultivating at night. And on some occasions, they saw UFO show up. One time they were in their house and they saw this lights shining in their bedroom at night. And then another time they saw a light while they were out in the field at night. And then one night, Antonio Villas-Boas was out there alone, and this egg-shaped craft all of a sudden showed up. It landed. He was on his tractor at the time, and all of a sudden that failed. The engine just conked out. And next thing you know, he was getting dragged in this craft by these creatures, weird, strange creatures that had masks on, and they dragged him into this craft. Apparently they were Greys, based on other reports, right? They must have been. And they brought him into this craft. They did blood. They took a blood sample from his cheek. They put him in some sort of a room where there's smoke filled the room, and he was coughing his brains out. Next thing you know, some naked female came in the room, but she wasn't normal looking. She had a pointed chin. Her eyes were too big, but she looked human otherwise. But at the same time, he knew that there's something off about this female. She didn't talk at all, and he was basically forced. He was compelled. He felt compelled to have intercourse with this creature, right? And he didn't want to. During this this female was growling like an animal. He felt like he was laying with an animal, and it was more than one time. After the first time, then they did it again. They took a sperm sample, and then it was over. And she pointed up, like up to the sky, like and at her stomach, like, oh, she's going to have your baby in space. That's basically what it seemed like, right? And he reported this to researchers, and they felt compelled somewhat to believe his story, as fantastic as it was, because he had these lesions. They couldn't explain these lesions on his body that he was suffering with after this incident happened. He also had the scars on his face from where they took the blood sample from. And this Brazilian farmer, he led his life after this. He became an attorney, and he had kids of his own, and he didn't care if anybody believed him or not. But that was the story of Antonio Villas-Boas. And then and these stories might sound crazy, but in one of the stories from the 1990s, there was actually other evidence, actual physical evidence that was left behind. I don't know if I'm sure that some of you have probably heard of this book right here, Hair of the Alien. This was written by Bill Chalker, and it's about the experiences of Peter Corey from Australia. And he had encounters starting in the 80s. Actually, when he was a kid, started in the 60s, but he had these weird experiences over the years. And in 1988, he had an alien encounter in his room when he was staying with his parents. He was older at this time; he was in his early 20s, about 24 years old, and he had this experience. But then in the early 90s, in 1992, he was he worked in construction, and but he got injured at work. There was these guys that attacked him, so he was trying to recover. He had headaches and stuff. He was on medication at the time, and he was trying to recover from this. But he would give his wife a ride to the train station in the morning, so she would go off to work. And one morning, he got up at 7 o'clock in the morning. He took his wife, Vivian, to the train station, and she left for the day. It was only a 3-minute ride, and he went back home, and he was still feeling sick. He was vomiting and stuff because he was still ill from this attack. And he laid down. And no sooner did he lay down, he felt like some pressure on the bed, like somebody was sitting on the bed. And he sat up, and there was 2 females on the bed with him, naked, completely naked. One of them had dark hair, and she looked Asian, except she had a little pot belly, like looked like she might have been pregnant. And then the other one, who was that was closer to him, was a blonde, and they looked strange, both of them. They both had their eyes, just like in the Antonio Villas-Boas case. Their eyes were larger than they should have been, and apparently they were there they were going to have. They were trying to have sex with him. The blonde was going to try to have sex with him. She rubbed herself up against him, and he reacted. He bit onto her breast, and he took a chunk off, and then he started choking. And 5 seconds later, these 2 women were gone. They just disappeared. And but he still was choking on whatever he bit off this woman's breast. And he went into the bathroom, and then he noticed on his private parts there was a blonde hair wrapped around his private parts. So he took that off, and he put it in a bag, and he kept it. He didn't want to tell anybody about this at first, not even his wife. He waited for a little bit to even talk about this with people, because he was too crazy for even him to even consider this being real. But he had no choice. It was something that really seemed to happen to him. He eventually talked to researchers, including Bill Chalker, and he told them the whole story, what happened. And he was hypnotized, and he remembered the event pretty much the same way as he had described it, because he remembered this consciously. This all happened as, he was awake. It wasn't like he was passed out or anything. What was weird about it was when it first happened, when he first sat up in bed, he felt like he was outside of his body, looking through the back of his head somehow to these females, and then he joined with his body, and then he could still see them. And that's when the blonde got closer to him, and that's when he took the chunk out of her and swallowed it. And he said that was there for a couple of weeks, I believe. If you read the book is unbelievably incredible read, I gotta say. I'll leave a link for it in the description. So he felt like there was something stuck in his throat from this, and they just disappeared. But then later on under hypnosis, he remembered a few more details, and he remembered that there was some telepathic communication going on. The Asian woman was talking about babies, right? That's what she was talking about. And he got the impression that that she was going to have his baby, or already had his baby, or babies. And now this blonde woman, who seemed younger than the Asian woman, was there to get impregnated by him. That was the purpose. And so this is a strange story. And then they did an analysis of this hair strand. He kept that hair strand. They did an analysis, and it had qualities that made absolutely no sense. The root of the hair follicle had a rare Basque Gaelic DNA, while the rest of it, the hair shaft, had a rare Chinese DNA. And basically, in this book, you'll see there's a drawing here, and they also have the DNA results of this hair, and it's regarding the drawing of the hair. It says this drawing summarizes the unusual DNA results found in the hair root and shaft areas, results suggestive of advanced cloning techniques and possible hybrid characteristics. The DNA results also suggested that there was aspects to the DNA that showed that these creatures would be immune to things like HIV, right? It was just very strange hair sample. It didn't fit, right? It was wrong. How could it be that? How could it be mixed like that? It showed that there could be some sort of a cloning going on with this. One other thing about the Peter Corey incident was that under hypnosis, he also remembered another incident involving that he had no idea about that happened previous to this encounter, that 1992 encounter with the same two females. So it seems like this is something that they do, right? And it's not just taking men onto the craft to have sex with these hybrid females. It's also just showing up in people's houses and doing it right there and then leaving. Like in the Peter Corey case, there's a lot of different incidents like reported like this. It's not just those two cases are probably the most well known ones with these kinds of experiences reported. There are other ones too. Older, there's lots of them. They're all over. If you do the research, you find a lot of different stories like that, and we'll talk about some of these stories right now. The Villas Boas case and the Peter Corey case, that they're just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot of cases like this where men are forced to have intercourse with apparent alien human hybrids. That's what it seems like, and apparently just to procreate, to have babies, to make more babies, I guess, in service to the hybridization program. That's what it seems like. What else could it possibly be, right? I mean, that has to be it. And so some of these stories, as I talk about these stories, I'm going to be showing, there'll be AI generated images that I created to help illustrate these stories. So those who are watching, that all the stuff you're seeing will be AI generated. Just so I just want to make that clear. And the first couple of stories we're going to talk about appeared originally in the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization Bulletin, or APRO Bulletin, from November 1983. We're going to talk about those two stories first. The first one involves a person named Antonio Carlos Ferreira, and it happened in June of 1979. And in this article, it just uses his initials, AC. So it says here, and this was something that was dug up by Miss Irene Granchi. She was a good friend and representative to APRO from Brazil at the time. And this is what she reported. She says here, this, of course, happened in June of 1979. AC was a night shift guard at a furniture factory at Mirasol. At 3 a.m., he checked out, visited the bathroom, and came out to face three beings of about 4 feet in height, each carrying a small cigar box-shaped package on their chest and a slightly larger one on the back. The beings were dressed in white coveralls covering them completely. AC was taken to an oval craft some 6.5 feet across, the bottom by 8 feet high, by means of which he was carried to a large mothership. So basically, they took him to a craft, these alien creatures. They took him to a smaller craft. That smaller craft zoomed up into the sky, into some sort of a mothership, according to AC. Details of his experience during the 2 hours he was away were described during several subsequent sessions with a hypnotist. AC met 10 or 12 of the crew, some leaf green, some brown like himself, who seemed to communicate among themselves with buzzing sounds, but with him by thought transference. I just want to stop there. The buzzing sounds. A lot of people always report buzzing sounds. I heard buzzing sounds when I was a kid, that time when that creature was in the room. Buzzing sounds that lasted the entire 20 minutes of that whole episode. Anyway, he was disrobed against his wishes, smeared with evil-smelling oil, injected with a hypodermic, and persuaded to mate with a 5-foot-tall brown woman who, though resembling the humans AC knew, was still different enough to be recognized as not of this earth. After this experience, he was returned to the bathroom where it all started, minus his underwear and bruises that lasted for months and were not identified by the doctors who attended him. In subsequent years, AC was visited 6 more times by the space beings, once to show him his daughter named Azealia, so the beings told him. The daughter looked very much like her mother, with a narrow face and pointed ears. AC is now a married man, has a better job, and seems to be doing well in spite of the certain knowledge that he will be visited again. In this case, there are several pieces of strong corroborative evidence. AC's dog Hongyu, affected at the time of the abduction by a light beam, has changed from an aggressive watchdog to a disinterested spectator on life. Several witnesses reported lights near the factory at the time of the first encounter. AC's footprints ended several feet out from the bathroom. There was a large circular dust-free area there, and the grass around the area showed signs of having been burned. In addition, steel columns supporting a shed nearby were tested for magnetism and found to have a strength approaching 7 Gauss. As the months passed, the magnetic strength remained at normal all the time. Antonio still has the undershirt burned during the abduction, the scars on his body, and the wall calendar, which was burned because it was in the line of fire. So there was another story, very similar to the Antonio Villas-Boas story, but this one happened in 1979. So the guy gets done working at night, walks out of the warehouse or the factory where he works at as a guard, and next thing you know, he's getting dragged onto some sort of a oval-shaped craft, brought to a mothership, and forced to have sex with some sort of a alien hybrid. That's what he said. It wasn't a normal human being; it was something different, alien. And then here's the second story here. This involves Joe Valerio da Silva. He was a doorman at a hospital, and he was married and a father of 3. This happened on November 29th, 1982. About 1:50 in the morning, JV began having stomach pains. He arose to find some medicine and a drink of water, but because the water inside the house was off, he stepped out the back door to find his drink. There he met a 6-foot-tall being coming down a shaft of light. The being pushed him into the light shaft elevator and took him up into the hall of a craft where he met another human figure. These figures were covered head to toe in close-fitting coveralls with slits for eyes and mouth. After a short conversation between themselves, the beings literally passed through the wall and were replaced by a beautiful young female without clothing. The lady removed a Y-shaped object from the wall, touched JV's left cheek with her right hand, and JV passed out. He was found in his backyard at 5 a.m. by his wife and 20-year-old daughter. His clothes were in a pile beside him. His body was covered with an oily substance, and there was a queer circular mark on his right chest. The wife and daughter put him under the shower to wash him off as he slowly regained his full senses. And there was corroborative evidence. Oil stains on his clothing was not yet analyzed. Marks and bruises were on his chest, lesions in the genital area, and leaves on the tree near where JV was found showed burns on one edge, with opposite edges still green. A local agronomist declared that the effect would be most difficult to duplicate. It is strange that for some months prior to this experience of JV's, peculiar things were happening in his home. Several times the gas stove was lighted in the kitchen by no one. Dishes were broken, a saucepan lid raised itself into the air, flipped over, then settled down. After the incident, these queer happenings ceased. So there you go. There's another weird story. So this is what seems like is going on here sometimes. And probably some people don't even remember it, I would have to imagine. I mean, in Peter Corey's case, when he got hypnotized to try to recall more details of his 1992 incident where he consciously remembered these 2 females inside of his house, right, in his bedroom, just appeared and disappeared. He remembered other things that happened before that. He met them before. That wasn't the first time, but he would never have remembered. He wouldn't even have known about it if he didn't consciously recall the second incident. So basically what's going on here, there are alien female hybrids that force themselves onto men, whether the men are dragged into a craft or whether it's in their own house, right? Whatever, it doesn't seem to matter. And actually, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? It should be a lot easier for them this way, because if you're using hybrid women rather than hybrid men in these instances, it makes it a lot easier, because then these are aliens, and they get impregnated by the unwitting man that they use, right? And then they could have the baby in the spacecraft, and the aliens could take care of it from there. When women are impregnated in these instances, when women are artificially inseminated with alien DNA or with hybrids, fetuses, or whatever, however they're doing it, then they have to bring them back again. This way, they don't have to bring them back again, because the hybrids are the ones sent out to get impregnated by men who have no idea what's going on, and then that's it. I mean, for all we know, for all anybody knows. I wonder, how many people out there might have a bunch of kids they don't even realize, alien kids, half alien, half human kids floating around out there, hybrids, like as David M. Jacobs talks about. Like, they look just like human beings. Over if you keep doing it over and over and over again, right? You keep working toward that goal of making them look just like a human being. This is what they would probably do, right? It seems like that's what they are doing because, in for instance, in Corey's case, you had the evidence, you had the hair with the DNA that didn't match anything really here on Earth. So this is what's going on, folks. There are people out there who are forced into this by these beings. You're forced to have sex, right? That's what's going on. Now, there's another story here I want to talk about. This one involves a Mexican American named Larry Gomez, and this happened sometime during the late 1960s. It was midnight, and Larry was en route to his father's sheep ranch when he turned his pickup onto an old dirt road just off US 80 west of Tucson, Arizona. What he saw caused him to stop. 50 feet in front of him was a strange glowing object, and his first thought was flying saucer. The UFO descended on a tripod landing gear. Larry got out of his truck to investigate. Although curious, he didn't want to get too close. From out of nowhere, there appeared two figures dressed in strange overalls who frightened Larry. Before they put him into a hypnotic trance with their large, slanted eyes, Larry noticed their lack of noses and lips. He awoke from the trance, naked on what seemed an air mattress. Around him stood his abductors, who soon left, only to be replaced by an alien female. Her facial features and size was similar to Larry's kidnappers, but she was obviously female. Larry noted as she stood naked before him. Larry noticed no pubic hair or other body hair on the alien which stood in front of him, trying to be seductive. She approached Larry and tried to sexually arouse him with tactile manipulation, but nothing came of it. Perhaps Larry's subconscious libido was saying, "This is a sin, she isn't human." Yet this soon changed. The alien girl placed her satin-soft hand across Larry's forehead, and she appeared to change. He saw an alluring woman with an enticing smile. Larry immediately became sexually aroused, and they performed what was originally intended, sexual intercourse. Afterwards, Larry passed out. He woke outside the truck. The UFO was gone. His only proof was a few burn spots where the UFO had landed and dim memories of a sexual union with an alien female. Larry Gomez was questioned by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the United States Air Force officials about his UFO experience. It was then that he realized what had been bugging him. The transformed girl had looked familiar to him, but he couldn't figure out where he had seen her before. During the interview, Larry realized that the transformed girl was the woman on a pinup calendar that Larry had often admired. The fact that she changed into a desirable woman to fulfill one's sexual needs sounds like the legend of the succubi, demonic spirits who inhabit the bodies of beautiful women to seduce men with sexual pleasures. There have been other cases of sexual relations between UFO knots and Earthlings, but the ones mentioned here should serve to illustrate a sexual interest in humans by the aliens. Given yet these cases are true, why are they, the aliens, interested in us? Okay. I think I know the answer to that, because they're trying to have our babies. They're trying to create hybrid races. They have already done so, I would have to believe, after all this time. And based on the research of people like Dr. David M. Jacobs, it seems that they have succeeded. There's no question, right? I mean, he interviewed over 1,000 different abductees, and that's the purpose behind this. They're to create an alien hybrid race. There's Ubers living among us right now, according to him and other researchers. And for what purpose? I guess we have yet to see what that purpose is. I would assume they're slowly taking us over. That's what it would seem like, right? But these are some of the things that are going on, or have been going on, and I'm sure that they're still going on, right? I'm sure that these kinds of things still happen, and for a lot of people, they don't even realize it. That's what I would have to think. A lot of people don't even realize it. For who knows, like in some of these instances, why did some of these people remember it, or remember parts of it? They would remember little bits and pieces of it, and then they recall the rest under hypnosis. Some of them remembered the whole thing consciously, like in the case of Antonio Villas-Boas, he remembered the whole thing. Some of these other people remembered most of everything that happened to them as well. Peter Corey remembered just about everything except for the communication that was going on telepathically. So that's what they're doing. They're basically Here's this is what I think is going on. This is what I think has happened. If you based on all of this, right? It seems like they came here at some point in the past. Who knows how long this has been going on, right? And they slowly started building this hybrid army, right? And they started off, small. A lot of some people who get abducted, they claim that they see beings that look just like aliens almost, but they have hair and they're like early stage hybrids, right? Actually, David Jacobs has a breakdown of all this in his books. So, and then they keep working on that till they get to the a place where these hybrids look just like humans, and that's what this is all about. And they want to they have to have sexual union with humans to make this happen, and that's what's going on in these cases. These guys, in these instances, and these stories that we're going over here, they were forcibly taken by these aliens, forced to have sex just for the purposes of procreation. That's what seems what's going on here. So there's another thing to think about. Now, of course, this happens with women too, and I am going to do a show about this in the future at some point, but I wanted to focus just on these kinds of stories because there's a lot of them out there that are like this, where guys are having encounters with alien beings and then forced to have sex with these alien female hybrids, and all obviously for the purposes of procreation. This could be happening to a lot of people, and some people might not know it or they might not recognize it. Well, but this is they seem like this is what they want. This is what they're doing. Sometimes they're meeting up with men, these female hybrids, forcibly having sex with them. There's nothing the men could really do, and then they go away, and apparently they have babies somewhere else. Hybrids. That's what's going on. As crazy as it sounds. But based on the evidence here, I mean, particularly the Peter Corey incident where you had the physical evidence, you had the hair strands that showed DNA that's basically impossible, right? So just another thing, another element to this whole UFOs, alien and presence mystery to ponder. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.